All right, everyone. In just a minute, I'll figure out how to fast forward past this screen. I'm just going to push that button right there. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Rackspace Live. We are live here, middle of the day, middle of the week. You know what that means. It means we're talking about all things cloud as it relates to what we do here at Rackspace. Folks, my name is Jeff DeVerter, and I am the Chief Technology Evangelist here at Rackspace. And if you are out there and you are watching, holy cow, would you introduce yourself down in the little chat down below? I'd love to hear from you. And boy, look at that. All my animations froze. That's kind of fun. Let's turn it off for a minute. But, just put it in your chat. I'll see it over on the side of my screen. Doesn't matter if you're on YouTube or Twitter or LinkedIn. We'll be able to see you there. So go ahead and introduce yourself. That would be super awesome. And guys, we're going to have a really good conversation today. We were here last week for a chat with Ray, who helps lead our Elastic Engineering pre-sales technical efforts, solution engineering, you can think of it as. So listening to customers' challenges, their opportunities, and hey, Sam Martin, first one to say hi. Glad you're here. But Ray's team helps design and get people launched into Elastic Engineering. Today, a very different conversation. In fact, today we're going to talk about, hey, Gary, glad you're here, UK Racker. Hope you learned something. Today we're going to talk about, specifically, we're going to talk about how we deliver and what's different about delivering Elastic Engineering solutions from just regular managed hosting or whatnot. In fact, in this case, of course, Elastic Engineering. Now, call to action, folks, that we would love for you to go and while you're watching this, Lee, you're commenting in the comments down below, which is perfect. We got a really cool call to action. In fact, we've got an amazing guy who has said some super awesome things about us. If you're a fan of the show The Office, you may remember a man named David Wallace who ran the whole operation. Well, David Wallace is actually a Rackspace Elastic Engineering fan. All right, we've got a LATAM team here. We've got Mark Unger, who is here. We've got, a legal racker. Very cool. We better not say anything that'll get us in trouble. I don't want to be in trouble. Hey, we're going to even look at some of the wrong side of the screen. Look, you guys introduce yourselves now. You're going to be able to see yourselves. So be nice. Don't say mean things. Don't say naughty things. Our legal friend would not like that very much. We don't want that. All right. Well, let's move in here. I have got a little bit of news for you. We're only going to cover one article today. And that article is actually something out of Harvard Business Review. Now, the link will, I forgot to give it to Daniel. It'll be along shortly. But if you go over to Harvard Business Review, you'll be able to see this article. Now, it is some sponsored content that came out of AWS, which is great, but it's operations and executing a growth strategy with an agile cloud. And I thought this was a particularly poignant article for today. Hey, I got to pause for a second. Wes Thompson's here. Wes, I'm glad you're watching. I haven't talked to you in a good long while. Glad you're here. Raphael is here, which is fantastic. He's going to be joining Rackspace. We've got Mandy, who's in from Belgium. It's a global audience here at Rackspace Live. Back to our article right over there. Cloud technology, it's evolved. More and more people are moving into these. I was having a conversation with a business gentleman out of the UK over the past few days. And he was really challenging me on, hey, are people really going to move, even financial services, going to move their workloads out into the cloud? And he said, imagine if JP Morgan ever did. And of course, then here's this article. I shared it yesterday on our Solve Live episode, where JP Morgan is now committed to move all their stuff out this year. But, we've seen companies like Capital One. They have closed their last data center in 2020 as they moved out into the cloud. But this move to the cloud is so much more. Oh, in fact, look at our friend from the UK is an Agile Scrum Master. Agile Scrum Master is like a segue that's working right here. And that is that the move to the cloud denotes a change in the way that you actually do your business and the way you develop applications, the way your different teams inside of your organizations work together. And it's not just a connection of new technologies, but a new way of doing business, an accelerant. Now, that means that everything changes. In fact, if we think about cloud operations for just a second, which is also our topic of the day. Boy, isn't that clever? If we think about cloud operations, well, just being responsive to when the infrastructure goes bump in the night. Well, you know what? The infrastructure shouldn't go bump in the night. If we've architected it and designed it well, it should be resilient. But that doesn't mean that we don't need operations to help us through and solve these problems. In fact, if I push that button right there and push that button right there, I get to introduce you the best dressed man in LinkedIn, and his name is Garrison Draper. Now, Garrison, we were supposed to also have a second guest, but he lost power, and apparently computers need power. But he's the director of Elastic Engineering here at Rackspace, and we got to talk about Elastic Engineering last week when Ray was on, and so why don't we go ahead and bring Garrison up onto the stage. Garrison from the backyard. Welcome to the program.
Yes, welcome to my backyard.
Not only the best dressed man in LinkedIn, but the best office in LinkedIn, I think, as well.
Yeah, it's always funny. Like this half of the year, usually people in Canada are like looking at my backyard and you're just upset. And then during the summer, it's always people in San Antonio. They were like, it's too hot to be outside, right? No, not where I live.
Not where you live, not at all. Hey, we've got Jason Morrell. We're glad that you're here. You're a tech advisor over at TBI. Hopefully this will ring true with you today. But so Garrison, what we wanted to do is chat a little bit about delivery of engineering and support services for cloud-based models. Now, we have an offering about this, and I don't want to talk about the offering right at first, but I want to talk about what is different about supporting a cloud-based serverless, modern application as opposed to an older application. What are different things you might have to do that are different?
Yeah, it's basically a totally different approach, right? So in yesteryear, right, the data center days of Rackspace used to have to build hardware and then hand that hardware over to a team so they could actually deploy to it, as an example. Yeah. Nowadays, those two teams are kind of merged together in a DevOps approach to the cloud, which allows customers to be able to be very agile and be very fluid in what they're trying to actually do in the cloud and with their applications.
Yeah. And so that really brings a new model that's required, because if we're building infrastructure not with hands and boxes and racks, and we're building it with code, that code gets rid of a job. But we can take it to the next level as well, and that might be I don't necessarily need to even have an alarm that says, "Hey, go build a server," because we're getting overrun with requests. I mean, we architect and design for these sorts of things these days.
Exactly. Yeah. I like to say you design for failure, and with cloud hyperscalers like Amazon and Google, you could easily plan for failure and have it automatically kick in and fix itself. I call that being highly resilient, where you take an application and you design it so that when something does fail, it self-recovers, it fixes itself. And that's the approach that we take, right? We want to build these things so that the applications fix themselves, because it's always quicker to have the computers fix themselves than it is to page somebody and wake them up at 2 a.m. when something goes wrong.
Right. Yeah, and it does a lot of good things for people as well, because nobody likes an alarm that wakes them up at 2 a.m. to go, build a server, for that matter. So we're saying that cloud operations is different than regular data center operations. There's still things that need done, but it sounds like the majority of those are code-based or configuration-based as opposed to infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so having everything as infrastructure as code gives not only the advantage of being able to have like a Git-based workflow where you have multiple people reviewing your work before you go to deployment and production, but it also allows you to actually be able to reproduce something really easily. So a customer could come to us and say, "Could you clone my production environment real quick so that I could test something out?" And we could have that up and running, within minutes. It really depends on how many stuff there is. But having infrastructure as code allows for us to duplicate things, reproduce it really, really easily.
So there's a super question that Jazz brings up, and we put it up on the screen because I think I want to bring it into the conversation. And that is this discussion about full cloud versus hybrid cloud mixture, or just the new model and the old model? But it's actually a little bit worse than that, isn't it? Because, as Garrison, as you guys are helping and even deploying containerized applications in a private cloud, you can do a lot of these same things.
Correct. Yeah, you could do. You could take infrastructure as code as an approach to anything on-prem. There's no reason why you wouldn't be able to do that. But the cloud just gives you a lot more options and flexibility, and you only have to pay for it when you're using it, right?
So there are a lot more Legos in the box.
Right.
To put it in
I will say this, Jazz, to add to that, if you are going to go, cloud, my recommendation is typically to pick one cloud and go with it instead,
Yeah.
of trying to approach multiple clouds, because unless you're, a huge enterprise, having multiple clouds isn't really worth it. I mean, not even Netflix runs multiple clouds. They're all on Amazon.
Yeah. That's right. I brought up the Capital One example before, all in on Amazon as well. And we're not necessarily pitching one cloud over another, but just choose one and go all in that space. Now, DR, as Jazz mentions also in his next comment, what about DR? You could think about DR cross clouds, but I'm not even as much of a fan of that, because there are so many disparate regions these days that you really can, I think, pick up that resiliency regardless of your cloud of choice. From a disaster recovery point of view, even if, like what happened to Amazon this past November, seems Novembers tend to be bad for US East 1. But, if you had
for Amazon,
yeah, but if you had a deployment in Europe, granted, you're picking up some latency, but you wouldn't have been bitten by that one.
Right. I mean, and I'm going to use Netflix as an example again. Netflix runs out of 3 different regions in Amazon, and they purposely once a month cut off a single region, and they don't go down. They design for a total region failure, and they practice that once a month.
Yeah, they do, which you have to do, because DR isn't a checkbox. DR is a day-to-day activity, or at least thought as you engineer and as you build. Well, let's get a little deeper here into Rackspace Elastic Engineering. Here we are at Rackspace Live. Guys, Rackspace Lives, we're telling you about the amazing things that Rackspace brings to the market to help people be better with their clouds. And in this case, it's a thing called Elastic Engineering. So Garrison, I think we have got to start by defining it. Even though Ray did it last week, we've got some new viewers this week.
Yeah, so Elastic Engineering is sort of an approach to the cloud. Basically, what we did, we take the 2 pizza man team, and I'll define that in a second, that Amazon came up with, in that you want to have a team of engineers that can be fed only by 2 large pizzas. And the reason why you want to take that approach is because any teams larger than that would be unmanageable by one person to be able to call the shots, to be able to approach a problem. So we create these small teams. We call them pods, and I actually see some pod leads on this live stream watching me.
Oh, nice.
So Daniel, nice to see you. We take these small teams, and this allows us to actually limit the number of customers that an engineer has approaches. So you might have 10 customers in a pod, and that means that we become very, very familiar with the customer's environments. Enough so that, we're such a close knit with some of our customers that were, prior to the pandemic, we used to be invited to their customer holiday parties, because we are their team, right? We get to we're an extension of their team. We work hand in hand with their application developers, with their key stakeholders, to be able to make sure that their cloud journey is as native and as cost effective as possible.
That's incredible. And again, just to contrast that, if you think about the traditional managed hosting sort of a model, it's responsive. There are thousands of rackers the world over, whatever company you're working with, who are literally just waiting for an event to occur. And that event would be an alarm bell goes off, or a customer sends in a request. Spring into action, do amazing things, as opposed to working side by side, hand in hand, with that 2 pizza team, making things happen. And so what happens when there are more needs than what 2 pizzas can feed, Garrison?
So we have a few customers that fall into that category today. Some national banks that have more needs than one 2 pizza man team could do. Basically, what they end up doing is getting multiple of these teams, these pods. So there's one customer that has 3 full pods today, and those 3 full pods basically respond to and interact with different teams at the customer, and they can plan things out appropriately. We're still keeping the 2 pizza man team size, but we're splitting it out into multiple sets of those 2 pizza man teams so that we can do more for the customer.
That's excellent. So let's talk delivery for a second. Again, if we think about traditional model, we're thinking event respond, as opposed to, we think of things in sprints. So is it every 2 weeks we're refreshing, we're adding to backlog? Take me through kind of day in the life of delivery, or the week in the life, or 2 weeks. Give me a sprint view.
Yeah, so effectively, we're trying to approach everything as like a software development team would do, right? So you mentioned the 2 week sprints. We actually do 1 week sprints, but it could be 2 weeks, could be one. And effectively, what we do is we talk about where the customer's trying to go, and we plan that out. Ideally, 3 months in advance. We'll actually have what we call a long range plan, where we actually come to and build out that 3-month plan with the customer, figure out where they're trying to go, and then we actually build out with their infrastructure to meet their needs in the future. And that allows for us to actually actually plan things out appropriately and actually have things like, big example, every year, Black Friday, right? We have a bunch of retailers that use us. And with Elastic Engineering, you could also go up and down in hours, which means you can get more throughput for months when you need it, like for the month of November or December, as an example, if they're doing a huge sale.
Yeah, and that is really where Elastic, one of the key elements of Elastic Engineering here at Rackspace, and that is where we you can scale that number up and down. Now, when a company comes to us, a 3-month commitment, but after that 3 month, because there's like getting to know you time, we got to get machines on networks, we got to do all that stuff, and it just takes a little bit of time. But once that's done, it's basically driven by the customer, down to as low as I think 25% for that whole pod of team and commitment, up to 100% if that's what you need, and always a direct relationship to the same team, never a variable on what team you're going to get poached with. And that's why our guys keep getting and girls keep getting invited to holiday parties when they used to happen.
Exactly. It's very much a proactive approach to the cloud versus reactive. You mentioned it earlier that some of our competitors, they just set up alarms and wait for an alarm to go off or wait for something to break. We're actually ahead of that curve, right? We're proactively working with the customer to be able to stay ahead of that and be able to know when things are going to break and hopefully plan around that.
Which is huge, because you're the guys who are trying to look around corners from an infrastructure point of view of what could come around and bite this application. How can we make it more resilient? How can we make it more automated? How can we make it more whatever? But it begs the question, because we're talking about getting in infrastructure as code. So code, is this professional services, or how is it different from professional services?
It's kind of a blend, to be honest with you. We like to call it professional services on demand. So you can use us for patching servers or the traditional things that you used to see in like managed service providers would be providing. But you can also use us to plan new things and be able to you have a team of experts with you at your hand, right? So the customers can come to us and be like, hey, we're thinking about this thing, and let's whiteboard. Let's figure out what the proper way to do this, and they can spitball ideas off of us, and we can say yes, they're good, or no, they're not, and course correct, and hopefully get them to the point where I actually like to say we try to get to the point where they don't need us. Automate me out of a job, please. If we could do that, then we've done our job successfully. We've created a platform so that they can actually use the cloud, whatever cloud it is, appropriately and effectively without actually having to need us.
Garrison, one of the things I've noticed is that the kind of that promise of the cloud is, it's always getting better. There's always more features. But, when companies move in and they're not thinking proactive operations, they rarely have the time to pay attention to the new releases. They barely have time to think about how those new releases might impact or could be applied to their applications. They may build the most resilient, cool infrastructure to do something. Well, 6 months in, their cloud provider of choice may make an as a service that gets rid of half of that and half of the cost that goes with it. So that's one of those areas from an Elastic Engineering point of view that you guys are doing. That's that piece of looking around the corner. What's new that's out there that our company could utilize, our partner?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what we see is historically what a lot of people do, our customers do, is they actually approach the cloud with what they're familiar with. So if you've always built an application stack that has Java and MySQL, you're going to do that in the cloud, which might be a mistake, right? Instead, maybe you could throw that MySQL database in RDS and save a little money. Maybe you could, and that also gives you the highly resilient capability as well. Maybe you could take that Java application, make some tweaks, and throw it into a serverless approach, like in with serverless framework or something like that, right?
Right. And so then when we think about, what does this team do week on week, month on month, the things that you just mentioned, these are not for the faint of heart, especially if these are large applications or large data sets. So it's the Rackspace Elastic Engineering team in partnership with the company's own developer teams to take and figure out what are the risk rewards, where's the right place to put those efforts. Now let's create a backlog and a calendar where we think about when we might approach some of these items and work together to make the right decision to get the right outcome.
Exactly. And maybe along the way, we come up with an idea that is more efficient, more cost effective for you. I mean, that's when we're the experts, right? We'll be able to give that information to a customer and guide them along this cloud journey, right?
Well, you rightly use the word experts over and over because you guys are doing this stuff day in and day out. In fact, I asked you as we were kind of hanging out in the effective green room before we came out to chat with you guys today. I asked you, how long have you been with Annika slash Rackspace? Because you was part of Annika and then Rackspace bought Annika. And so how long was that?
So this March it'll be 7 years. I've been here doing this, and I've done every job under the sun for Annika and now Rackspace. So
Yeah.
um,
What was your
it's been
first
fun.
job at Annika?
My first job was actually a quality assurance engineer. So I was actually testing applications that got deployed to the cloud to make sure that they were, working in all aspects and finding bugs, that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very different than what I do today.
Very different because what we do is very different. But you've been in this space, and your team members have been in this space. Now you lead groups of teams who go out and do this work, and they're working together. So that when questions comes up, you do have the breadth and depth of all of us to help look to the future and figure the pieces out. And I'll tell you, so it's our cloud native development team too who help with some of this work, and even on the professional services side. And I'll go watch every Thursday. They've got, I don't know if you've ever been to these, but they get together as a team and they show off the latest thing that they've built for a customer. And I saw a push button, globally resilient application get deployed and operate in live real time, literally in seconds. It was incredible, the stuff that they are doing for customers that they then make and put into a body of work that's available for anybody else to consume.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen that specific demo, but the cloud gives our customers all sorts of opportunities they never had before. You mentioned earlier, it's constantly changing, and we're always there to help and guide our customers down that path.
Garrison, one of the things that I say about the cloud is, and I know intrinsically this is a false statement, but empirically I think it's a true statement, and that is that the cloud is infinite in capability and it's infinite in capacity, because our customers aren't at a point yet where they can ask enough of the cloud. We haven't hit the end of the cloud yet because they keep developing new capabilities, and those sorts of changes, especially as you get deeper in, become more impactful for the company. So there's only so much change an organization can absorb at a single time. But what do you think when I say the cloud is infinite in capability and in capacity?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we haven't actually hit the limit. I agree with you of what is capable, what is possible is probably a better way to put that
That's right.
in the cloud today. Amazon and Google and Azure are always constantly coming out with new technologies and new as a service, as you mentioned earlier, services that allow for customers to do things really efficiently and very cost effectively, much more so than being on-prem. And you'll notice, by the way, just for everybody watching this, like we're talking about the cloud native aspect of this, because that is the most cost-effective way to approach the cloud.
Yes.
Doesn't matter which cloud. Doing just a lift and shift tends to be a lot more expensive than refactoring the application to work natively on the cloud, whatever cloud that ends up being.
Yeah, not a fan of the lift and shift unless it's part of a longer roadmap that's been decided upon, and that's the easiest first next step to do. And some companies have to. I mean, think about divestitures or mergers and acquisitions, or a colo facility decides to close and you've got to go somewhere. I mean, there's sometimes you got to go somewhere. So as long as it is a step towards a farther direction, then lift and shift can be a good strategy. I prefer to say move and improve in that context.
Yeah, and I've seen sometimes customers need to do a lift and shift because it's either that or a very expensive capex that they have to expend on their data centers, and that makes sense. It's either spending a bunch of money now or spending it over time while you transform your applications, right?
Yeah. So we go back to thinking about that conversation about infinite capability that might be out there in the cloud. That really goes back to Rackspace Elastic Engineering and having folks who know what is possible to figure out what the right, go back to Lego bricks, what the right Lego bricks are to bring to the table that the customer maybe didn't think about before. Because what the customer's doing, what the customer should do, running their business, not necessarily thinking about the latest and greatest in cloud technology. That's what we do. That's our job. It's also our hobby.
I like the Lego bricks analogy. That's a good one. And it's true. Like our process, going back to Ray last week, he and his team will get together with a potential customer, figure out what's needed, and then that we'll use that to figure out which team is the appropriate team to place them. Right. So if they're a Windows stack that's .NET, maybe we'll put them on a team that has a lot of .NET experience. If it's Kubernetes, maybe we'll put them in a pod that has a lot of Kubernetes experience, allowing those bricks to match up perfectly. And if we place them into a team, and then of course something new comes up, like let's say they're a Windows and now they want to talk about Kubernetes, it's not like that team doesn't know Kubernetes. They can turn around, and any one of our number of our experts in any other team can teach them on that, and they can expand their knowledge and guide the customer down that path.
Yep. Hey, so everyone, we've been flashing up this URL down on the screen. Now, it's a way to get back in. Of course, if you want to learn more information about Rackspace Elastic Engineering, you can certainly fill in a form there. But I would encourage everyone to go to that URL, because I mentioned The Office before. David Wallace. He actually recorded a bit on Rackspace Elastic Engineering, some analogies to The Office. Quite entertaining, quite short, so you're not investing a lot of time. But head over to rackspace.com/all of that other stuff, and you'll probably also see it in the description that you can click on for this event, or maybe even producer Daniel will drop it in the comments as well. But I'd love for you to go check that out. Garrison, thank you so much for being on Rackspace Live today. Yeah, you and your team you're doing huge work. And really helping companies push the boundaries of what's possible with their cloud implementation. So thanks for being here.
You're very welcome. Glad to be here.
You bet. And everyone, have an amazing day. I would encourage you to come back tomorrow morning at 8:30 Central Time. Solve Live is back, and holy cow, do I have a great treat for you in that event. A good friend of mine over at Canva is going to be here to talk about the art of storytelling in 2022 as enabled by Canva. So love for you to come be a part of that conversation. In the meantime, go watch what David Wallace has to say, and head over to rackspace.com/lp/elastic-engineering-contact-us. You'll love it.
Take a breath.
I tried to get it all in one. I couldn't do it. Everyone, have an amazing day. Garrison, go complete the Lord's work. Go help those servers.
Of course. Thanks everybody for tuning in.